ever wondered how a plant gets food? A plant is able to grow by creating food through a process called photosynthesis. The plant has chloroplasts that are used to absorb sunlight, which is then converted to glucose, which can be used to create energy for the plant later on. However, with too much sunlight or too high of a temperature, it could lead to damage and hurt the plant, causing it to denature the enzymes in chloroplasts, which decreases the rate of photosynthesis and dehydrates the leaf. Photosynthesis starts with the light-dependent reactions and occurs in the thylakoid membrane. It is the first reaction of photosynthesis and produces energy-storing molecules such as ATP and ADP. After the light-dependent reaction takes place, the light-independent, also known as the Calvin cycle, happens. This occurs in the stroma. It produces glucose by using CO2 from the atmosphere, along with the ATP and NADPH from the products of the light-dependent reaction. The light-dependent reaction is the first step of photosynthesis. It starts off with pigments in photosystem II absorbing sunlight from the sun. As more and more sunlight gets absorbed, light energy from the sun is being used to increase the energy of the electrons that are in chlorophyll. The high-energy electrons are transferred from photosystem II to the electron transport chain, which is a series of proteins embedded within the thylakoid membrane through which high-energy electrons move. Then the energy from the high-energy electrons are used to transport hydrogen ions from the stroma into the thylakoid space and to replace the transported electrons. New electrons are released into the thylakoid space, and O2 is released into the atmosphere. The electrons move through the electron transport chain into photosystem I, where they are re-energized by the sun's light energy. Electrons are then transferred to a second shorter electron transport chain, where they are picked up by an electron carrier. Electron carriers such as NADPH and NAD+ carry 2 electrons at a time, and they act as oxidizing agents. NADP+ becomes NADPH after picking up an electron from the end of the electron transport chain. Across the thylakoid membrane, there is a concentration and change gradient, and it must be relieved. In order for it to be relieved, the ATP synthase moves hydrogen ions back into the stroma to eliminate the gradient. The ATP synthase produces ATP as it relieves the gradient. After the light-dependent reaction finishes, the light-independent reaction will start. First, in the light-independent reaction, the CO2 from the atmosphere enters. An enzyme called ribisco comes to combine each of the CO2 with a RUBP. The intermediate 6C molecule is split in half to produce 3 phosphoglycerate acid molecules, which is known as PGA molecules. The 3 PGA molecules are then converted to G3P. This requires energy which is provided by the ATP and the NADPH molecules from the light-independent reactions. During mid-cycle, a G3P molecule is removed and then becomes the foundation for building other compounds like sugars. The remaining G3P molecule are then converted back to RUBP molecules to be reused at the beginning of the cycle. 18 molecules of ATP and 12 molecules of NADPH is used to create 1 glucose in 6 turns of the Calvin cycle. And that's how photosynthesis gets food. Some additional things to note about the process is that carbon fixation, which is the conversion of inorganic carbon from CO2 into an organic carbon, such as carbohydrates, mostly occurs during the light-independent reactions, but it also occurs in the first step of the Calvin cycle. Light-dependent reactions captures light energy into chemical forms, which is then converted into stable energy storing molecules during the Calvin cycle.